All right. Okay. So now we're live again. So
What's up?
sorry
What's
about
up?
that. I have no
No
idea
problem.
what the fuck happened. Um,
No problem. You're a bigger man than I for continuing to stick to the live stream because we tried to do it for a while and it's a
shit.
shit show clusterfuck and I hate it. So it happens.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Okay. So did you see the AMA?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
it's
So what are your thoughts on that?
it's interesting. Yeah. I I'm totally fine with believing that she's just an artist and there's nothing else going on. And I don't have anything to refute that. Based on the context of that conversation, I mean, being honest, like, you hear things, you hear that she said, what's done behind closed doors, all these quotes and stuff, you tie them all together. Yeah, I hadn't looked into the actual conversation, but reading it sounds like she's giving it the artist perspective, and she's just a she could very well be just an artist, and that's fine.
Mhm. And to play devil's advocate, I mean, I looked into her background. She claims that she's not religious; she's actually spiritual. So, and she
Sure.
grew up Orthodox. Forget exactly what it was, but she mentioned this in an interview with somebody that she grew up in. Forget exactly what religion it was, but it was some branch of Christianity. It was, I think it was something Orthodox. I want to
Mhm.
say Greek Orthodox, maybe. But
Okay.
she herself considered herself, and I talked about this in the video, she considers herself to be spiritual and not religious. So she
Mhm.
doesn't identify as an occultist. She doesn't identify as a Satanist. She doesn't identify as a witch.
Sure.
So I'm going upon what she identifies herself as. Because
Okay.
there are plenty of people in Hollywood and throughout the entire world who are witches, occultists, and Satanists, myself among one of them, who openly
Sure.
admit it. I don't do anything illegal, so I don't have any reason to hide it. There are
Yeah.
some people who prefer to remain anonymous because there's still a stigma attached to it.
Right.
They can have stigma from work, they can have a stigma from where they live, they can have a stigma from maybe the culture that they grow up in a neighborhood.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of people who wish to remain anonymous, and
Sure.
and they practice witchcraft or study it or study paganism or whatever, and it's not because they're concerned about whatever they're doing in secret, people are going to find out about it,
Sure.
as much as it is that there's a stigma attached to it, and people have some weird superstitions about people who practice that, and they think it's kind of weird, and so
Mhm.
they suffer consequences because of that. There's been
Yeah.
trials where uh, the parents get divorced, and the mother practices Santeria or witchcraft or whatever, and then the father's a Christian, and they get into a custody battle over the kid. The guy goes into court and says, "Well, she practices voodoo and drips blood
Mhm.
all over the thing," and
Right.
uh, so
Yeah,
there's a lot
and
of people who wish to remain anonymous. Go ahead.
honestly, this all of this ties together into what I'm trying to do with the moon landing thing. It's like people will jump on you. They will jump to conclusions about you. If you say, "Hey, I'm a witch," or
Hmm.
whatever, I practice witchcraft, they will jump to conclusions. But if you ask them, what do you know about witchcraft? They'll say, "Oh, Halloween and Bill Schneblin and everything." Like they'll spew all this stuff out that they think that they know, but they don't actually know anything. And
Hmm.
my whole thing is just I don't know. I don't know. That's why I want to talk to you because you're a very decent human being, and I enjoy talking to you. I don't think that you're here to try and poison my soul and make me drink baby's blood or anything. But there are people that jump to that
That comes
conclusion.
later.
Right. There are people that jump to that conclusion. It's like in all the things in politics, conspiracies, and religion, people will instantly say, "I know a thing. I have all my bases covered. I know." It's like you don't know. That's it. Like they don't. I've told friends and family like, "Oh, I talked to a witch on my show." I'll just say it in passing. It's not a big deal. It doesn't matter. Obviously, we're here doing it. And they're like, "Well, do you have any concern about like what that could be bringing into your life?" I'm like, no, duh. Like, I believe that there is a God. And I believe that there are dark forces, and definitely, I don't think that Ken is my enemy. Obviously, and I jokingly poke fun at them. I'm like, No, because if there are demons, I don't think they know how to use Skype. I don't know what you want me to say here.
Right. Well,
So
to exactly, and to give you a plug and Christianity a plug, if God does exist, and I don't really have any evidence to say that it doesn't. You know what I mean? I'm more agnostic about that, even though people kind of
sure.
poo-poo on agnostics. But
Mhm.
that's what I am. I'm agnostic about it. Um, if let's say Christianity is absolutely correct, the version that some some fundamentalist Christians follow, where there's
Mhm.
they're engaged in spiritual warfare and they believe that the blood of Christ protects them and all this. If that is the case, and God created every single thing in everything that we know,
Mhm.
if this was the source of everything,
Mhm.
why would you be concerned about some low level follower of
Right.
Satan, who's the adversary who God basically allows to exist? Why
Right.
would you be concerned about that? Because your God is so powerful
Right.
that it doesn't take any energy to protect you from whatever dark forces there are.
Sure.
I mean, that's just
Yeah.
the way. I don't think that Satan is more powerful than God,
Mhm.
according to the Christian religion, at least. And
Right.
I don't even believe Satan exists. So, you know what I
Sure.
mean? But going
I'm
by
open.
just a, go
I'm
ahead.
open to that being a possibility as well. I am certainly not fundamentalist, and there are a lot of like my dad was a pastor and everything. I was raised very fundamentalistically, but I'm just like I certainly can't prove to you that Satan exists, and you can't prove it to me either. It's a possibility, sure, but based on what you're telling me about Christianity, that there's Satan, there's God, spiritual warfare, there's hell, which is a lake of fire that God says, you go burn forever because you question things and you got it wrong because that's dangerous or something. Like I don't buy into any of that stuff, and I'm open to it being a possibility, and I can't change it if it is. But if there is a man named Yeshua or Jesus who walked the earth, like his main goal was understanding and loving people. He talked to the lowest people. He talked to terrible people. I'm certainly not saying that you're lower than I, you're smarter than I am. That goes without saying. But like, why would you assume that? Why would like family members be like, well, you can't talk to a witch. He's bad. It's like, okay, do you think that that Jesus, this person that you choose to believe in, do you think that he would have said, I can't go on Skype and talk to a witch because he's poisoned my soul? It's like, what are you even talking about?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, and I agree with you in that sense. Like there's nobody that I'm afraid to talk to or I feel would poison my point of view or
Mhm.
um you know there's certain people, like I said earlier, who I just have no desire to talk to.
Sure.
That I already kind of understand their worldview.
Hmm.
If they got out of it, like if they, for example, I don't know if I said this on air, if this was before we were talking, but I was talking about like the Klan. I'm not gonna
Hmm.
like I'm not gonna interview David Duke because
Hmm.
I already know who he is and what he associates with, and I
What
don't
if you're wrong
that
though?
huh?
What
What
if
if
you're
I'm
wrong though?
wrong about
Yeah.
David
Well,
Duke?
what if sure.
Do you know who
Just
he is?
hypothetically here, I'm not supporting David Duke, but what if David Duke, like, that's the thing. Like, I am open to talking to anybody. That's the only thing that I disagree with you on. And I'm probably a heretic to all the Christians for saying this, but I would talk to David Duke. Um, I I know what I think he probably thinks, but I could be wrong. I might not know what he thinks. I'm open to maybe he is painted poorly in history. It's a possibility. I'm not saying that that's the case. It probably isn't the case, but what if it is? I want to hear his side of it, just like I want to hear your side of it, because we're all humans, and he's probably a really fucked up human who came to really bad conclusions. I want to see that and know that 100%. I want to hear it from the idiot's mouth that
Yeah.
that's what he believes.
Yeah. Well,
And
I think that's where you and I differ,
sure.
and that's okay.
Mhm.
You would interview him, and that's fine. I wouldn't.
Sure.
I would interview him after he denounced it and left. I definitely want to interview him then, because people do change. That's the other thing that drives me nuts, is that people do change. Change is inevitable. People's opinions change and they do evolve and all this.
What would be your reasoning for not wanting to interview him, out of curiosity? Like, is it just because
I don't want to give him any attention?
It's so vile. Okay.
I don't want. Yeah. Well, it's not that he's. Well, yeah, he is vile. I mean, if I hate somebody based upon the color of their skin, or any aspect of a person, if I hate somebody because they're bald or they have hair or they're tall or they're short or they're fat or they're thin or this or that, I don't think that those are. I don't think those are valid. Like if you hate somebody because they're a fucking asshole, yeah, I can understand that. But just hating somebody based upon rather subjective things, no, I don't. And I have no desire. There are people who I feel who have gotten painted inaccurately. Like they've been labeled, they've been mislabeled. Like, for example, I don't know if you're aware of Count Dankula and the thing that happened with his pug. Okay, so you know about that. He's not a Nazi. But the media has labeled him this.
Right.
It's like, and then they continue to do it, even though it's absolute bullshit. And then other people pick up on it. And then suddenly it's like this guy in Scotland who has this pug that he trained to, basically to piss off his girlfriend, suddenly gets named a Nazi. And meanwhile, actually, but anyhow,
it's funny. It's funny.
Yeah. So I mean, I understand that there are people.
I'm a dick. I would do it. I'd train that pug to do that thing as a joke. It doesn't make him a Nazi. It doesn't make me a Nazi for training a dog to do a funny thing. Like, it's just
so it's
bizarre.
Like so there's people out who get mislabeled it, but then somebody who actually like is called for
sure.
absolute hatred and lynching of a type of person.
Sure. And I'm asking, like, humbly, because I don't know all that much about David Duke. I haven't dug into his history. I haven't dug into actual quotes from him. Has he, like, do you know for a fact that he has said, I'm not supporting David Duke here, just so we're clear, internet. I know how you guys are, but have you seen the evidence of him saying, I hate all the Jews or all the blacks or whatever, lynch people? Do you know that for a fact? I really don't know.
Yeah. I seen him in a Klan's outfit, unhooded Klansman's outfit. I've seen him with the regalia of the Ku Klux Klan. I've heard him speak, and I don't exactly remember everything that he said, but that is enough for me to not to want to associate with him.
Sure.
And not to have him on my channel. Same thing with somebody who is in, part of the Black Israelites or the Nation of Islam. I already know enough about them that I know that I don't want to have them on my channel.
Sure.
So that's and you can actually Google, you'll see interviews of him on, I think he was on like Phil Donahue or something. He was on a talk show once, so I'm sure you can see that. You can find out information about him. I mean, I grew up hearing about him and knowing about him, and so that has definitely shaped my worldview of him. And then it's been corroborated when I see him, like, in a Klansman's outfit without the hood, and him around other people who are, openly Nazis. It's no question. It's really funny about the media because they go, oh, well, that guy's a Nazi because he did this. But then you ask them, they're like, no, I'm not a Nazi. Meanwhile, people over here are like, oh yeah, I'm a Nazi. I fucking hate everyone, and it's like they're openly saying it, that's a Nazi. This guy over here with a pug, no, he's not a Nazi. He's just he's just a shit poster,
Right.
But anyhow, we're getting way off here on, which is kind of fun.
That's what I do.
But
I like it.
yeah, I don't want to waste your time talking about that. But
all good.
Okay, so back to Marina Abramovich. So I know that we got interrupted when we did the AMA, and it sounds like that little piece of evidence. It sounds like there's a little more clarity to it there. Did you have any question about what spirit cooking is, or do you know what it is?
Very little. If you have more information, I'm certainly open to it. That was actually one of the questions I had. Yeah.
Okay, so my understanding of Marina Abramovich spirit cooking is in her performance pieces, she'll do a lot of shocking things. Like she'll paint with pig's blood, and she'll write things,
Bash
little
her head into a
poems.
wall.
I don't think she's ever bashed her head into a wall, has she?
Or I watched a documentary where she was like, I think she was like running head first into a wall. I don't understand it, but I'm not going to assume that it's satanic or anything. But or like her and another guy running naked full speed into each other. I don't get it, but that's fine. You be your own weird. That's fine.
Okay, no, I didn't know about that. I know that she's done a lot of very risque
Yeah.
types of performance art, and
Yeah.
she's had these huge fundraising dinners, which is spirit cooking. And then she wrote a book called Spirit Cooking, and that's the one they had the quote where it's like, drink 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 warm breast milk on earthquake nights, and these weird
Sure.
things that it's part of that performance art. So she's already kind of on the fringe of performance artist, and
To say the least.
yeah. So it's people are shocked by it. She uses the pentagram. She's used 666 in her performance art pieces.
Mhm.
She's done a triangle and a square, and the infinity symbol, and so she uses those symbols that we associate things with, probably to shock people.
Mhm.
That's what I'm assuming it is.
Sure.
So
The
that's
same as
the
like
extent of it.
Marilyn Manson or Slipknot or something using that imagery. It's like I don't assume that Corey Taylor from Slipknot is, a devil worshiper just because he's a shocked dude. I don't care. Like,
Well, I know that Marilyn Manson knew Anton LaVey. I don't know
Mhm.
if he is a Satanist. He might be. I don't
Mhm.
know for sure. But I know that I think he's been seen with Anton LaVey when Anton
Yeah.
LaVey was alive. So he might be a member of the Church of Satan.
Yeah.
I don't know for sure. I wouldn't be too surprised if he was.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, Marilyn Manson's a different one. And then there's other people who may study the occult, or maybe Satanists, or maybe witches, whatever.
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not all that important to me. I mean, I do actually know of several high-profile people who do practice the occult and are witches, but I don't know if they want
Mhm.
the public to know it.
Sure.
So I'll leave that to them
Mhm.
to decide if they want to, you know, uh, come out of the broom closet.
Right.
Um, but yeah, so that's about spirit cooking. That is just her performance art.
Sure.
So any other
I can see
questions
that.
about that,
Yeah.
or
Not necessarily. I mean, like if she says she's not tied to any sort of religion or necessarily spirituality, I mean, it's just, especially given my variables that have gone into my life and my upbringing and everything, stuff like that does raise a red flag because it's things that I don't understand,
mm,
and that goes for a lot of Western society and America and everything. Maybe Hillary Clinton is involved in spirit cooking as an art piece, but it seems strange to me. It seems strange. I'm not saying that I'm right, but I don't understand it.
so but
And
but what's the connection that you're making with Hillary Clinton and Marina Abramovich?
I don't remember offhand, but
Oh,
like her and Podesta being in cahoots with the spirit cooking stuff, like talking about it. I don't remember the specifics on how those tied together necessarily, so I don't want to like make things up or whatever. There might not be a connection, but people have certainly made that connection, as you know. And it's just like if there's this very bizarre art piece that's frightening to the public, it doesn't make sense. It's weird. And there's this person in a high profile society who's part in hypothetically partaking in this weird art piece with them, or going to things with them that where they do these kinds of things, just say it. Just be open about it and say what it is. Like, I am friends with Marina Abramovich. She's doing this art piece, and we went there and we partook in whatever she's doing. It wasn't necessarily a religious thing. It's just I don't know. It's like there's no transparency in government. There's no transparency in all the things I talk about, and that's my biggest issue. Is that when people start to ask questions, when there's things that are being hidden, when there are things that when there are secrets, like when I talk to the Freemasons, it's like the reason why people have a big problem with you guys is because, like, we all jump to conclusions, we put pieces together in our mind because it feels like you're hiding something, and I'm transparent myself, I hope, to the best of my extent that I am. And it just feels off-putting when it's like, that's a thing I don't understand. Not only do I not understand it, but they refuse to tell me about it. So our brains come up with nefarious intent, I suppose.
Yeah. Okay, I can understand that, and I think that's why most people have a concern or a curiosity about an organization that's private, like the Freemasons. The Freemasons are a private organization. People call them a secret society, but they're really not. They're not a secret society because they've been around for a very long time. Right. They're actually very well known. You can actually go and purchase a book that basically has all the rituals. So you can find out a great deal about the Freemasons without actually joining and becoming a member of the Freemasons. And there are people, I'm sure, who have joined the Freemasons just to find out what they're about. Maybe they believe a lot of this bullshit that's spread about them, and so they become Freemasons, and then they find out that there's actually nothing there, and people have to make shit up to make them look
pancake
bad.
dinners aren't that exciting after all.
Yeah, right. It sounds like I'm an outsider too. I'm not a Freemason. I've known people who are, but it sounds very boring. A lot of the stuff that they do.
Well, the Freemasons that I talked to, they said a lot of it's really boring.
Yeah, and I'm sure it gets monotonous too. You're like, oh fuck, another first degree, son of a, and then it's just like, you're done. You're like, okay, we've gone through this. I've been through the first degree initiation X amount of times. It's like being a part of it, not being initiated, but being like a part of it. I can imagine it probably, like, after a while, you're like, fucking hey.
Right.
But just because an organization is private, it doesn't mean that they're up to like nefarious, things. But I don't know. I don't think Hillary Clinton was involved with Marina Abramovich that much. And even if she was, like, let's say Marina Abramovich was a Satanist. Let's say she was a hardcore member of the Church of Satan, and all of her artwork was influenced by occult symbolism. And so she uses just a little bit of that occult symbolism in her artwork. Even if she was, and even if she, like, people interview her and say, well, your artwork is very weird. What is your inspiration? She's like, well, inspiration is the occult or Satanism. Even if she said that, let's say she admitted it. So what?
Sure.
It doesn't change anything. You know what I mean? She does weird performance art. I think one of the things that most people really latch onto is the idea of her spirit cooking, which she put up on the wall. Drink warm breast milk on earthquake nights. Cut your finger and eat the pain. And then they were looking at the Aleister Crowley's Cakes of Light, which is really, it's supposed to be a recipe that's passed down to, like, initiate to initiate. And it's, so there's different people who have a concept of what the recipe is. But Aleister Crowley, in his book, I think it's, what is it? It's, I think it's in The Rite of Phoenix. and he gives the recipe for it. It's the recipe for the Cakes of Light. There's some elements that sound sort of similar to her poems that she wrote, and I think that's the strongest connection that people make.
Sure.
And when I looked at it, I could see, oh yeah, I could see how there could be a connection, because when you're writing down a recipe for something, there is going to be some similarities. Like the Cakes of Light, you're supposed to put like because I don't want to get this wrong.
Sure.
I think people can put a drop of their own blood in it if they want. But the recipe itself was like, like honey and something to leaven the bread. There are certain things you have to have in it. You have to have like a leavening. You have to have a protein. You have to have some kind of an oil. So there's certain elements you have to put in even just to make a wafer or a cake. And so that part of it is, there's only so many things you could use in it. You have to use wheat or flour or whatever to make cakes. So that element, I'm losing track of what I'm saying here. But so when she wrote those poems about the cake, what would she call it? It was just like a poem about earthquake nights and breast milk, warm breast milk, and cutting your finger and eating the pain, and then people associated that with the Cakes of Light. I would think that was the strongest evidence. Like if you had asked me the question earlier about like what is the strongest evidence that I would have about thinking that Marina Abramovich was actually talking about the Cakes of Light and not just making up some kind of a weird poem, that would be the strongest evidence of all the things that I've read about Marina Abramovich and Pizzagate and all the stuff and the WikiLeaks. That's like the strongest piece of evidence. And even so, it's very weak. Anybody who actually knows what the Cakes of Light are and knows what her poem is and who she is knows that that's, there's no connection there. But in my mind, if I was going to put myself in the position of somebody who's a conspiracy theorist about it or assumes something about it, that would be the strongest piece of evidence I would say is there.
Sure.
So
how about to go back to the emails a little bit? Again, trying to just understand how these things could make sense. The email about the X amount of dollars for pizza and hot dogs to be delivered to the White House, when from what I hear, the White House does not allow food to come from an outside source. It has to all be made within the White House to avoid any tampering or anything for security reasons. Like that email I find hard to understand. Do you have any explanation or anything?
I don't have any explanation except for what is in the email, and I don't understand the context, and I'd have to look at it. But we could come at it from a couple of different ways. You could say that maybe they weren't talking about pizza, or they weren't talking about hot dogs. Maybe they were talking about something else, and there was money involved. Campaign funding, or something. Politicians are shady people. I know this is a shock. This is a big, huge shock for people out there, but politicians are shady people. They end up shuffling a lot of money around and sometimes covering it up, and keeping their constituents happy, because they get elected and put into office not because they have great personalities, but because they have a lot of financial backing. And once they've gotten into that office, then they need to uphold the agreements that they made with the people who gave them the money. So on that end, it could be something that was some money that was being funded somehow or funneled somehow. Or it could be an event where they bought a lot of pizza and a lot of hot dogs. I mean, there was an event that happened with Trump where he bought all these hamburgers. I think it was when the government was shut down and they couldn't cook food in there. And so he bought like probably hundreds and hundreds of dollars of crappy, McDonald's food.
Yeah.
But so that again, that's not a shock to me. That's nothing unusual. If they're spending like, $10,000 on hot dogs and pizza, I mean, depending upon what it is, yeah, it could be, if you chartered an airplane to get Chicago style pizza and have it delivered to Washington, it might be that much. So if anything, you wonder about what's going on with that money. And I think that's an important thing to look into, but I don't see anything else in it. I don't see any kind of pedophile activity or any kind of pedophile ring in it. I don't see any of that,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like I said from the start, I absolutely 100% unequivocally, if that's a word, hope that you're right. I know that there are people out there who are like, they get off on this type of thing. They're like, they legitimately hope that the world is more mysterious than it really is. And I'm not that person. I find it, I mean, of course there's a certain level of entertainment in being the national treasure guy from your the comfort of your house, like putting pieces together. I know that that's what most of the people with this mindset are, but I want to know. And if there is something terrible going on that's being covered up, I want to know that. And if there's people that are saying that people are guilty of things that they're not guilty of, I definitely want to know that too. So yeah, I'm not here to try and convince people of anything, except for humans are humans, and some humans fucking suck, and some humans are just they're fine. They're just going about their day to day, and they're doing things that you don't understand. It's fine.
Yeah, and I admire that about you being open-minded. But I do, for my own point of view, I feel sometimes like it's already been explored, so we don't have to continue to sit there and rehash it and wonder, like, is it? Like, I don't have to sit there and continually convince myself and other people that unicorns don't exist, because there's just simply no evidence that unicorns, and I'm talking about like actual unicorns, do exist. They don't exist. Dragons, they don't exist. I don't have to convince anybody of that. Nobody's seen a dragon, All of these things, I don't have to convince anybody that they don't exist, because they don't exist. You know what I mean? The
only thing I disagree with you on is if a unicorn walked through your room, through your studio there, you'd have to go, well, I was wrong.
Yes,
there are
absolutely.
things that come out, and maybe I'm wrong. I don't think unicorns exist, but if I saw one, okay. Are you willing to accept it when it happens? Like one thing that I pointed out on my show recently is like we think we've got it all figured out, but scientists just in the last week came out and said, well, the moon is actually in Earth's atmosphere. Like, well, we accept that, but with yesterday, if you told us that, we would say, no, you're wrong, and because we had it all figured out. But now we're given new evidence, and the moon's apparently somehow in Earth's atmosphere. Okay, so what do you do with that information? Do you stick to what you knew to be absolutely 100% true, or do you say, well, I've got new shit, and I guess that's part of the equation now. Let's move forward.
I have people in my chat telling me that dragons exist, by the way.
Haha. I'm not the craziest person here.
No, you're wrong. Dragons exist.
Yeah. All right. They've seen a dragon then. Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I do have an agenda. I'm definitely biased when I come onto my channel, and I mean, so I am out there to try and convince people I'm out there to try and change people's minds. I mean, I'm definitely out there. I'm not going to try and hide that. I think anybody who's followed my channel realizes that. And the reason why I do that is because I want people to be operating in agreeing to a certain reality. And if something comes up that's really unusual, like a lot of these, I don't know a better word for them, but these conspiracy theories that sound outrageous, that's disturbing to me, because it's like, like I hear some things, like when I started hearing about Pizzagate, I was like, no, that's that's false. That sounds like
Sure.
bullshit to me. And so I looked into it a little further, and all the evidence that I came across that convinced me that it was bullshit, other people were looking at it saying that, oh, it's just, that means this,
Right.
and then they begin to build onto it and create other things, which to me is very disturbing. I think it is scary that people will buy into certain conspiracy theories. I think it's
Mhm.
interesting to think about, like John F. Kennedy getting shot. Like, was it really John? Oswald? What was his name? What was his name? Something Oswald. Pat
Yeah, Lee
Oswald or
Harvey.
whatever. Thank you, Lee Harvey Oswald. And
Mhm.
I think that's kind of interesting, because you go, oh well, maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was the mafia. Maybe it was the FBI or whatever. It's fun to kind of play with that.
Right.
It doesn't change the fact that it happened. It doesn't change the fact that he's dead now. It doesn't change the fact that he was assassinated. But people can speculate about what it was behind it, or what the reason for it was. But when people begin to question, like, uh, if some pedophile ring is being perpetrated by a pizza place in
Sure.
downtown Washington, D.C., and it's the evidence is just not there, and it's causing, I don't even know what's gone on with the business, but it's not the same. They've suffered greatly.
Sure.
They've suffered financially. They've had a bad reputation. A person even went in with an automatic rifle demanding to see the basement. That person could have shot somebody. There's severe negative consequences that happened. The hoax, the Hampstead case that happened in England, which I know our friend Thomas Dunn was very involved in. But the father is, people hate him. They think he's an absolute Satanist. The children who are involved, they have to be sequestered away and protected, and there's all these videos out there talking about them, and their names are out there and the likenesses are out there, and these kids are under the age of 10 years old. When they get into going into high school, and this stuff is still going to be there. And then there's the church and the people who live in Hampstead. They suffer. They get negative effects, and the father, his life is being threatened. So there are severe negative consequences for these crazy conspiracy theories.
Sure.
And even though we may not like when I heard the story about the Hampstead case, I was like, that, but it was still going on. I was like, this sounds like bullshit. But sometimes there's an element of truth to some of these things, and I understand that. Like, you may not have been molested by a satanic cult during some kind of a ritual where they're eating babies and drinking blood and making red shoes, but your uncle might have done something to you. And if that's the case, you need to take it to the police, and usually incest does happen within, the family. And so sometimes there's an element of truth in some of these situations. So that's why I'm not willing to throw everything out.
Right.
But stuff that doesn't make any sense, I'm questioning. But there might be some truth to it. But anyhow, what I'm getting at is, I appreciate you, Dan, being open-minded, and looking at both sides of things. But I hope that as you look into these things, you'll see that, yeah, this is true. And if you do find it out to be true, that you uphold the truth. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and I think that's for all of us, but also that even if you don't think there's a negative consequence to, say, let's say your documentary does come out and you do prove that or you give a lot of evidence to support that the moon landing never happened. Who knows what's going to happen with the information of that? And I don't know if I'm really expressing myself well, but I just think that we need to be careful whenever we are perpetuating or contributing to a conspiracy theory, because I think
Absolutely.
that there are serious ramifications that can happen from them,
Yeah,
consequences.
couldn't agree more. And I I hope that's been made painfully clear. I'm not a crazy Alex Jones type. That's the difference. He comes out and he says, "This is what happened." I come out and say, people are saying that, and look at that thing here. Like, let's talk about this. That's it. Like, I'm not going to say nobody died in Sandy Hook, because then I have to end up having to backpedal later on, like Alex Jones has done when he is given new evidence that proves that he was wrong. I don't. I don't know things. I don't claim to know things. I'm not going to say that we didn't go to the moon because I wasn't there. I didn't do it, and it. No matter how much evidence I have to support theory or whatever, there's still very likely something that I'm missing because I wasn't there. And until I go to the moon, I can't prove whether it's possible or not. It really, yeah, I totally get what you're saying. And I try to handle things as delicately and as respectfully as possible because, you know, things matter. People matter. Like if I'm talking about 9/11, I'm not going to come out and say 9/11 was an inside job because I don't know. I wasn't there. It did not. I was not in the building. I was not the one who detonated or whatever. I have no clear evidence to say I know that that happened because people fucking died, and I take a lot of it weighs heavily on me to think that I might say something that will cause somebody to do some wrong. Of course, that's very important, and I have all the respect in the world for people who died and people have gone through shit. And I'm not going to be dumb enough to say that I know anything because I don't, and I know that I don't, and I accept that. I'm just saying, hey, I'm looking into this stuff. I'm exploring it. People are saying things about this stuff. I'm going to look at it. And if you want to look at it with me, you can look at it with me. That's it. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we've been chatting for quite some time now, so we should probably
fun.
wrap it up. But there is one funny story I'm going to share with you. So Alex Jones recently was on. He made a couple of rounds. He was on like Joe Rogan show, and then
Yep.
he was on a guy named Steven Crowder's show.
Mhm.
And Steven Crowder is kind of like this Christian American guy who's
Mhm.
into first, he's very American, but he's conservative. I think it would be safe
Sure.
to say that he's a Republican conservative guy.
Mhm.
And I watch all kinds of different opinions of different people. So I don't agree with Crowder, but I will watch his stuff anyhow. So
Sure.
he was talking to Alex Jones about these conspiracy theories, and Sandy Hook came up, and he was defending himself, saying that he didn't believe in Sandy Hook, and some person misquoted him, and
Mhm.
so Steven Crowder was pushing him on these issues. But when it got to the point where Alex Jones was talking about the occult and magic and the idea of demons, he believes that demons come up from from the pit of hell or whatever, and they're like behind like a lot of the weird world events happening, like like people becoming transvestites. He believes
Sure.
there's they're turning frogs gay, but there's an element of this. He believes that the upper elites are involved in Bohemian Grove and the occult and all this weird stuff. Crowder wasn't questioning him about that at all
Mm.
because he didn't care about it.
Right.
He only cared about the Sandy Hook part. So he
Mhm.
was willing to accept, he was willing to challenge this bullshit. But when
Right.
it got when it got to a level of bullshit that he doesn't care about, he didn't question it.
Mhm.
And
Like
that's
that's
kind of
too
like what
crazy. Everybody accepts that it's crazy. Just let it sit there. It's fine. Well, let's
it
go to reality.
it could have been that. It could have, you're
Mhm.
absolutely right. I could have because I don't know how Crowder feels about that. But when I was
Mhm.
watching it, I noticed that it was like he was willing to question all this bullshit, but he wasn't willing to question all the
Sure.
bullshit. And I think
Right.
that's it's just as dangerous as some people who get into, like Sandy Hook. It was actors, and this other actor was here, and they just put on a fake prosthetic nose, and I mean they come up with some crazy things about that. But
Uh-huh.
people are willing to question some things, but then other things they're not willing to question, and that's the dangerous part. Because if you don't question that other part of it, you can, other people can assume that somehow that's true or it's accurate.
Right.
And yeah, and that gets dangerous. I don't know if you've ever seen his show.
I really like Steven Crowder. For what it's worth, I disagree with him on some things, but I like his show. I found it entertaining. I pressed play on the Steven Crowder interviews Alex Jones video, like an hour before we came on here. I hadn't gotten to the Alex Jones part yet, so I can't really weigh in on that. But yeah, what you're saying is absolutely true. Like, if you're going to play the role of a guy who questions things, you have to be able to question all the things. You have to be able to question everything that you think, everything that you put as your foundation, and that's kind of what I'm trying to do. And I'm probably missing some things. There's definitely some things in my life that I'm missing that I should be questioning, and that's fine. I'm open to it. But yeah, I can't necessarily weigh in on the Steven Crowder and Alex Jones thing because I haven't got that far in the interview. But I did watch the full 5.5 hours that he did with Joe Rogan or whatever
Oh,
it was.
wow. that was a long. I think it was like 4 hours, right?
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like crazy long. I was like,
Yes.
I don't want to see all that. Or no, maybe I'm thinking
I
of
watched
the
it
one.
in pieces.
Say what?
I watched it in pieces. It was not. I did not sit down and watch the whole interview, but I have finished the whole thing as of yesterday.
Yeah, whenever they have long interviews like that, is what I'll do is I'll put them in my watch later folder, and then like
Yep.
when I'm in bed at night, I'll just kind of like I'll hit play and just turn off the monitor and just listen to it.
Yeah.
and then at some point I'm like, all right, that's it. I'm falling asleep. Just put up the headphones. But I usually listen to it.
Yep.
So, all right, well, we've been going for a long time, and I really appreciate it. We could probably go on longer.
Let's do it again sometime. I'm down.
Yeah,
I've enjoyed it.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I really enjoy you coming on and sharing this, sharing your what you're doing with this documentary, and maybe if people haven't, maybe who came in late, maybe you could plug your what you're working on there again.
Sure. Yeah. The show, the podcast that I do is The System Is Down. You can find it at tsidpod.com. It's where we talk about all these uncomfortable things. I explain it as we talk about the things that your parents pray you don't bring up around the Thanksgiving dinner table, and we do it as kind of anti Facebook, the anti-social media. We're not here to shout or call names or anything. We're just here to explore things open-mindedly and humbly, and we're open to being wrong. The documentary is it's called The Moon, the Myth, the Legend, Lunar Lore for Humble Dummies, because that's what it is. I'm just taking a look at it. I understand that I don't know, and I'm not going to find the answer necessarily. I just want to explore it and encourage people in the future, encourage my children and your children and everybody's children in the future to just think about things, have an open mind, and be humble yourself to not shout down the person that you disagree with. If somebody says, hey, we never went to the moon, you can call them a fucking retard all day long, but that doesn't prove that we went to the moon any more than it proves that we didn't go to the moon. It just proves that you have a closed mind. I want people to, just explore things, explore why people think the way that they do. And so that's kind of my goal with it. I want to show both sides of the argument and present the things that I've found to people, and you make your own conclusions. I'm going to make it as entertaining as I can, because that's primarily what it is. You're not going to watch it if it's a boring, 8-hour long thing of a crazy conspiracy guy ranting. I want to make it an entertaining thing, and I do have a bias, and I am a human, and I'm going to lay it all out there and be as honest as I can, and who knows where it'll go. But you can support it right now. You can pre-order it. Really, I don't need money necessarily, but if you want to pre-order it, you can go to themoonthemyththelegend.com or moonmythlegend.com, and all the information's on there for the Indiegogo campaign. So there's that.
Awesome. And you mentioned you have a bias. What's your bias?
Well, my bias is, at this point in time, I am currently in the mindset of, I think that there's a good chance that we didn't go to the moon. And I'll lay that out there from the beginning. And as I'm researching things, as I'm uncovering things, if I change my mind, I'll lay it out as I have a bias of, I think that we went to the moon. It doesn't matter. It's like the whole thing is just my journey through this topic, and I'm going to be as transparent as I possibly can. I'm not going to go into it and say, hey, I'm I'm the superhuman that doesn't have a thought on this and going to explore it completely unbiasedly. I have a bias because I'm human, and we all have our biases, whether we say it or not. We do. So I'm just going to put that out there and say, here's where I'm at, and here we go. Let's look at this thing together and see what we can find.
Okay. All right. Well, let me see. I asked people if they had any questions.
Sure.
So I guess we'll wrap it up here. But if people have any questions, just go ahead and throw them in the chat. Boils. No, they're talking amongst themselves.
Hey, guys, over here talking.
Oh, one person, Case H says, I'm still angry at the pancake dinner comments. So I don't know what that one is about. Oh, maybe the
Freemasonry stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's actually what the Freemasons said. They're like, well, they're like, you think the Freemasons run the world. Everybody's convinced that the Freemasons, well, not everybody. You guys are convinced that the Freemasons run the world. We can't even agree on how we're going to run a pancake dinner, for fuck's sake. Like, it's a bunch of boring old dudes having meetings about how they can be better people. And they can't eat. Literally, our meetings are arguing about pancake dinners. So calm down.
Yeah, it's really funny because the same thing happens with me, like in the pagan community, the witch community. There's
Right.
there's a lot of individualists, and we can't even agree upon what we believe in our practice or what happens in the afterlife. You know what I mean?
Right.
Nobody
Right.
can agree upon this because everybody has a different opinion of it.
Right.
And so to believe that we are somehow able to be organized enough to cover up a crime, what I mean?
Right. Right.
It's
And it's the same for even Christians. Like,
right.
Christians are all saying, hey, we've got this all figured out. We know exactly what this text says, and it's right, and we believe it 100%. Like, well, you fucking split up all the churches based on the minutia details because you couldn't agree if it's pre-trib, post-trib, mid-trib, and now you're all just floundering around saying that you know what is. You don't know what is because you proved that when you couldn't agree on anything all throughout history. That's why there's a million churches instead of everybody saying we got it all figured out. Like, you don't agree. So obviously, probably, more than likely, statistically, scientifically, you're probably all fucking wrong, and it's fine because we're humans. Let's talk about it. Let's be real and open and honest and transparent about it, because you don't know. You can say that you know all day long, but you don't. You don't know anything.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, Dan, it was a lot of fun. I really appreciate it. I just realized I don't have the link to your channel in this particular Hangout. I will correct that afterwards, and because I did it in the first Hangout, so if people want to go and check out your channel, they can.
Mm-hmm.
But it's called The System Is Down.
Mm-hmm.
And
we're on all the podcast platforms too. It started out as just audio, and I've just made it into a video thing. So it's primarily podcast. It's on all the like iTunes, Stitcher, all the platforms for podcasting. So check it out everywhere that you can find.
All right, cool. And I'm going to be there to when you start going off on the rails of a crazy train. I'm going to be there to say, back that caboose up.
Sure. I'm open to it. That's fine. That's why I'm here. I love it.
Yeah.
And if I put out my documentary and spout a bunch of horse shit, feel free to call me out on it. That's fine.
call you out on the horse shit.
Yep.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, thanks again, everybody in chat. Thank you all so much. And Dan, maybe you and I, maybe we can do this again sometime. And because I always enjoy talking with you about these things, and I think it's great to have these dialogues and talk about this stuff and weigh the evidence and just look at it. Just take a look at it. Take a second look, because there's always two sides to every story. And sometimes the truth is actually somewhere in the middle. And I think that we can't really come to the truth unless we actually look at both sides of it and come to some kind of a conclusion. So, yeah. So, alrighty. Thank you all so much. And Dan, again, thank you so much. And have a great night.
You too, man. Thanks so much for having me. Anytime.
All right. Thanks.
Take care.